So, our lovely speaker today, Reverend Sally, is familiar to us all because she's a wonderful, wonderful part of our family. But I'm going to give you a little history of hers in case you don't know. She is an ordained Centers for Spiritual Living minister. She came to the ministry after 25 years in corporate and entrepreneurial work. She's done sales and marketing, television and radio advertising, production. Oh, you know, we'll have to talk about that advertising thing later on. It just, like, why hasn't that come up? She writes for the Science of Mind magazine, so you may be familiar with her there. She served at many levels with the Center for Spiritual Living in a variety of roles, and the co-chair of the 2017 virtual conference. Very passionate about end-of-life care, so she works in bereavement and has worked in many areas with that. So enough about your background. You're here, so let me show you to the gang. Please welcome Reverend Sally. Your background's great, but this is even better. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your time and talent, blessing us with your wisdom and your love. And we honor you and appreciate the work you do for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Well, let's hear it for our Master of Ceremonies today. Yeah. Aren't we just a talented pool of people here, or what? Amazing. So, today, I'm talking about speaking your word. There's a whole chapter in this wonderful book that we're using this month, The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity by Catherine Ponder. This book has been around since 1855, but it's an incredible pearls of wisdom that are in here, that this whole chapter is devoted to the dynamic prosperity law of command. And I want to start off with a story about a woman who used the law of command, perhaps not in the way that was the most uplifting. And this woman was the name of B.P. Roberts. She was affectionately known as Pearl. She lived in Key West. And there was a documentary on PBS not too long ago that I saw. Her gravestone was honored in this documentary. They were traveling around and talking about different cemeteries around the country. And Pearl's was rather unique, and I'm going to show you what it was. I told you I was sick is on her gravestone. Now, Pearl was a bit of a hypochondriac and had some health challenges, and she didn't mind sharing them with you. And so she directed that this was to be on her gravestone. This is it's not Photoshop, this is real, you can Google this. And she was actually using the law of command, even though she didn't realize it. Do you know what I mean? Because when someone is going through what I call an organ recital, this organ and this organ and this organ, and when someone is giving you their health rundown in not a positive way, then what are they claiming? They are claiming that which they are talking about. And so Pearl was doing just that very thing. She didn't realize it, but that's the thought that we're going to play with today. That we are constantly using every word that comes out of our mouth is either a prayer or a curse, whether we realize it or not. So are you ready to dive deeply into this? Yes. A few of you are. Are you ready? Yes. All right. We're ready to go. See? It's the power of your word. So, the word command actually means to have authority or control. We like to have control, don't we? And yet, I find that this is probably one of the most forgotten laws out there. We forget we have this power already at our command if we just use it. Because, see, when you speak your word, you're enacting a powerful energy flow that goes before you and makes things happen when you back it up with a consciousness of faith. So, Pearl Roberts was using the law of command, and so are you. Last week, Reverend Michelle, when she started this wonderful month-long journey into this great book, she talked about the 8 items that make up your consciousness. Remember what she talked about there? So the 8 items that she talked about, what makes up your consciousness, your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, your attitudes, your values, the words we speak, actions and reactions. Now, the words you speak actually happen to be the last thing, because usually you're speaking about all the rest, right? You're speaking about your attitudes, your values, your beliefs. And this is where it comes out into form. And you don't realize that the very vibration of what you are saying is going before you. Vibration is powerful, isn't it? That song was a vibration, was it not? As she was singing those words, she was putting that vibration, that wonderful, positive, incredible energy out into the universe, and so are you every time you speak. This is where we have to be really conscious and careful of what we are saying. Emily Cady, who is one of the New Thought pioneers, and she wrote a great book called Lessons in Truth. It's a fabulous book. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it. She said this from that book: one of the unerring truths in the universe is that there is already provided a lavish abundance for every human want. In other words, the supply of good always awaits the demand. Do you realize that? That before you have a desire, a want, a need, it's already there. Then she goes on to say, another truth is that the demand must be made before the supply can come forth to fill it. So in other words, it's up to us to actually energize that into beingness through the power of our word. Does that make sense? So you and I have this incredible power at our disposal each and every moment of every day, if we choose to use it. And there comes the rub. Isn't it so easy to forget sometimes who we are? And I say that lovingly because I fall into the same thing myself. We can find words coming out of our mouth sometimes going, did I say that? Because that is the power of what you are doing. So let me read a little bit about Emily Cady. Catherine Ponder wrote about her in this wonderful chapter. And she talked about how Emily Cady was trying to heal a prosperity issue in her life. And she said at one point she'd been trying for 2 years to prove that God was the source of her supply, regardless of her patient's financial responses to her treatment. Because sometimes she would give treatment to people, but they couldn't pay her for it. So she was trying to heal that within herself. She said in prayer it was finally revealed to her that she had not used the law of command. She had not made the positive assertion of prosperity. She then began affirming, "It is done. God is now manifested as my supply. It is done. God is now manifested as my supply." Let's say that together. It is done. God is now manifested as my supply. She writes, Emily Cady writes, that this thought proved to be her deliverance from poverty, and that never again did she have a financial need that was not met. That's powerful. That's where we actually have to take these wonderful principles that we talk about, and we actually have to use them. The rubber meets the road, my friends. This is where we get to move from, that's a great idea, to, I'm now speaking my word. That's what Catherine Ponder is talking about in a wonderful, wonderful way. I'm going to date myself with this. Some of you might be too young to remember this. Do you remember comic books? Well, I think they still have comic books, but the old kind of comic. Remember the Archies, and Superman, and Batman, all that. Well, in the back of these comic books, there were all kinds of really interesting ads. One of them that I vividly remember, every time I picked up a comic book, there was an ad for sea monkeys. Do you remember this? Do you remember this? Now, I never bought sea monkeys. They were only $1, by the way. But I love this ad because it was like, I want sea monkeys. I love underneath the headline it says, so eager to please, they can even be trained. Now, I never ordered the sea monkeys. Tim said that he did. He had lots of fun playing with, the other people ordered the sea monkeys. They weren't trainable, he says. Okay. But what I found was that I was reading something about this, that sea monkeys are not monkeys at all, that they're actually brine shrimp. And brine shrimp can actually be dehydrated to some extent. And all you do is add water, and they pop back to life. And then they're swimming around, and did they even look like monkeys? No, they didn't even look like monkeys, but they were alive, they were little shrimp, and they were doing their thing. So that's how it works when you are speaking your word. You activate the prosperity, the health, the vibrancy, whatever it is that you are claiming in life, you're simply adding the power of the command and placing your demand upon the universe. And so just like the sea monkeys could be brought to life with a bowl of water, you can change your life with the power of demand. Declare your power. I was talking with a woman once, and she said, you might have even said these words yourself, there's no good men out there. There are no good men left out there. And so I said to her, and you've just made it so. I said, let's take that. Let's take that and just reaffirm. How can we turn that around to use your power of command to say something that actually will be working for you and supporting you and uplifting you rather than a negative, there are no good men out there. And she went, oh, well, this is what she came up with. She says, I am love personified. I am now attracting the perfect man to complement my life. What a difference. That is a blessing, rather than cursing that which she does not see or want. So she decided to use this affirmation with her law of command, and guess who showed up? Her perfect right soulmate. What a coinky-dink. When we actually use these principles, as Johnny Coleman used to say again and again, it works if you work it. And so we get to do the work. That is what speaking our word is all about. And we have to declare our word with power, don't we? You have to have power behind it. It can't be, I now think that this is going to happen for me. No. Speak your word. We can't be wishy-washy. That's a spiritual term, by the way, wishy-washy. You cannot be mamby-pamby or anything that is less than the power of who you are. Elaine Boozler, the comedian, she's a very funny woman. She tells us about this when she said, I was dating a man for 5 years, but it wasn't going anywhere. So finally, I decided I'd had enough. So I gave him an ultimatum, and I said, look, if you don't tell me your name, I'm out of here. Thank you, Drummer Dave. She decided to use the law of command. I'm out of here. So you and I have that choice again and again and again. You can also turn your life around with the law of command. Have you ever had a situation that wasn't going your way? Am I the only one that's ever happened to? Okay. So something's not working right for you. You can use the power of command in this way also. I want to tell you the story about a wonderful couple, Grace and Walter. Now, Grace and Walter, this is a more recent picture of them, but back in 1941, they went on their honeymoon. They were so in love. They had just gotten married, and they went to California. Out in the woods, they found a beautiful cabin that they were renting, and they would, take long walks holding hands, and they'd come back to the cabin and have a lovely dinner. And then they were that first night they were trying to go to sleep, and they heard there was a woodpecker. Thank you. You are on it today, Drummer Dave. So there's this woodpecker pecking away at the roof. They can't get to sleep. So Walter goes out, he chases them off, and the woodpecker comes back and yes. Because they bore. They're boring into the wood. And so they get up the next day, and sure enough, there's that pesky woodpecker again. And so they were just like beside themselves because they weren't getting sleep. This woodpecker was up interrupting their beautiful, idyllic honeymoon. And Grace said, look, maybe there's a higher good here. Maybe there's something that we can claim out of this. Let's know that this, too, is for our highest good. And so they made that demand, and they placed the command of the verbal command out into the law. This, too, is for our highest good. Even a pesky woodpecker. Well, they came back after their honeymoon, and Grace and Walter Lance was a comic artist. He'd worked on things like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, and he and Grace went, oh, what about Woody Woodpecker? And so, of course, from there was born Woody Woodpecker. And we all remember that the intro, just like Pam was, And from that annoyance that they had, and them claiming, this too is for my highest good, they then were able to come back, and millions of dollars later, they had a wonderful story to tell about how Woody Woodpecker was birthed. What if we took that very same idea, that whatever pesky annoyances might be going on in our life, perhaps there really is something birthing through that is for our highest good. If we too can declare and command the universe to show us that. I actually had a teacher teach us a wonderful affirmation, and she said, I demand to see the good in this. And I've used that so many times. When something is like really getting me, I demand to see the good in this. And sure enough, the universe starts showing what really is going on. Because can't we all say that? That's something that happened that was like, ugh, I don't want to go through that again. But it really was. We can look back and go, oh, 2020 is our hindsight. So you and I, just like the Lances, have the opportunity to place our demand that this too is birthing something beautiful, brilliant, and prosperous for us. Catherine Ponder, in this wonderful book, says most of us have been human pygmies when we might have been spiritual giants had we dared to command God's good to manifest as He empowered us to do so. I don't know about you, but I'd rather be a spiritual giant than a human pygmy. Anyone agree with that? Are you ready to be the spiritual giant that you are? That's what we're talking about here. Catherine writes in her wonderful book here, a friend once related to me how the power of affirmative commands had helped her to regain her health. It seems that she had undergone a very serious operation, after which her doctor informed her and her husband that she would probably only live for another 3 months. Her husband, however, knew how sensitive the body is to the power of thought and how it responds positively and negatively to one's attitudes about it. When she returned home, he said to her, "You heard the 3-month diagnosis. You can accept it and die, or you can reject it and live. But if you want to live, you must do 2 things. First, you must stop talking about your operation and hospital experience. It is over. Forget it. Second, you must think about life, affirm life, and expect to live." He then suggested that she affirm daily, "Let divine health manifest for me and in me right now." She began using these simple words of command until it became a subconscious thought, until it became a subconscious habit with her to think many times a day. When friends or neighbors came to call, her husband always said to them, "We are not discussing her operation or her hospital experience. That is over. She is enjoying good health now." That was 22 years ago. That lady told me she has never had another sick day since that time. This is how powerful this is. And yet, isn't it easy to forget about this? Because we have around us all the time people speaking negatively that we can get sucked into that negative thinking. We were talking in between services, Cerise and Lonnie and I were talking, and she said, I think this hits home to a lot of people about speaking your word, because right now especially, we're feeling so powerless. We see the media filled with Hurricane Harvey in Houston and now Hurricane Irma in Florida, and we feel powerless to Mother Nature or whatever else is going on in the world. Nuclear warheads, you name it. We're being surrounded by all of that. And so this gives us back our power, doesn't it? This gives us back our power, and it made me think of a story. My ex-husband and I were living in Minnesota, and if you've lived in the upper Midwest, you know that they have tornado warnings with sirens, way before smartphones ever happened, where it comes over on your smartphone now. But there's poles all around major metropolitan areas with these sirens, and when there's a tornado coming, that siren goes off. When the siren goes off, go down to your basement. So, sure enough, we did. We grabbed the cats, put them in their kennels, went down to the basement, and we turned on the radio, and they were saying, it's imminent, it's right in our neighborhood. And so we knew that we had built this beautiful home, but we were about to sell it. We were 3 days away from selling this house. And so I thought, I'm going to put treatment to work here, and I'm going to place my demand upon the universe that this house is divinely protected. And so he and I sat there in the basement, and I prayed that prayer, that this house there was a cone of protection all around it, around our neighbors. And so, sure enough, we heard the wind was roaring. It was awful. We couldn't see anything. It was dark. It was night. It was about 3 a.m. So finally it goes by. We still couldn't see anything. We went out the next morning around 6 a.m. at dawn. And there was lots of devastation in our neighborhood. The only thing that happened to our house was there was a bit of fascia that had kind of grown off, and all my husband had to do was go boom and pop it back into place. Our house was perfect. A block away, the entire second story of a house had been ripped off. A bed was hanging out from the second story. And I was just so grateful, because even in the midst of Mother Nature, you can demand that you are safe, that you are protected, because that is the truth of who you are. It doesn't matter what's going on around you. Life is always working for us if we allow it to. And the law of command is one of those ways. Now, the two most powerful words in the English language, I always teach this, are, I am. Because whatever you put after that is what you are declaring into beingness. And so, yesterday, I found myself saying something that I had to use another of the most powerful words, and that is cancel, cancel. I've been using this for years. I can't remember who I got this from. Who? Okay, thank you. And I have been using this because every now and then, I don't know if you're like me, something comes out of my mouth and I go, where did that come from? And I said yesterday, I'm exhausted. Well, I just declared myself exhausted. I realized what I had said, what I had done, because that was not supporting me. And so I immediately said, because once you say cancel, cancel, what do you have to do? You have to replace it. And so I immediately said, I have access to the inexhaustible supply of God's energy. Immediately I felt myself perk up. I felt supported, uplifted. It made such a difference. So cancel, cancel is one of the best things out there. When you find yourself, or even if you hear somebody else say something, I'll do that many times. If they say something, I will either inwardly or just say it to myself quietly, cancel, cancel. I don't have to accept everything that comes my way, nor do you. So you've all heard the 4 agreements, right? Don Miguel Ruiz, one of those agreements is be impeccable with your word. So he says, speak only with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. These words are so easy to go, yeah, that really resonates. Aren't they a lot harder to live? Because when I say something that is not the truth about myself, I'm exhausted or whatever. That's the real meaning of the commandment, thou shalt not bear false witness. That's the real meaning of that. Because when you're bearing false witness, it's against or taking the name of God in vain. You are God. You are God incarnate. So you can't speak a word against yourself without being out of alignment or against others. This is so critical here for us to really watch our words again and again. This is such a basic idea, and yet, are you like me? You need reminders every now and then? Emmett Fox said, if you're feeling stuck, get back to the basics. And this is what we're doing here today. We're getting back to the idea that we are the very power of the words that we speak. Glenn Moschauer, who was an actor in the TV show 24, remember, with Kiefer Sutherland, with Jack Bauer. And so Glenn Moschauer played one of the agents, I think. And I saw him at a conference speaking a couple of years ago. And he said, you have to watch your words. You have to be really careful about what you say. And he said, pursuit is not the same thing as having. He said, I did not come to Los Angeles to pursue a career in acting. I came to Los Angeles to have a career in acting. Doesn't that make a difference? What are you pursuing? Maybe it's time you tell yourself you're having it. And it is here. It is you. It is now. You are the embodiment of it. Because the power of what you say to yourself determines the altitude at which you live. And he understood that very succinctly. When I think of how many people go to Los Angeles to pursue an acting career, and how many of them don't ever get an acting career, because if I'm pursuing something, do I ever catch it? I keep running. He had it down to the T. He understood, as a New Thought, as a religious scientist does, that we are here to have an experience of our choosing if we have the courage to claim it. And this is where I think many of us might have some fear. Well, if I claim it, that means I have to do it. Yes. Yes, you do. And that's where, when you come to a class, you're getting to do. When you put your faith out there and say, I'm doing this, you're doing it. So a shameless plug for my spiritual economics class on Tuesday night. If you really want to dive deeper into these ideas, take a class. And my spiritual economics class is all about claiming your power over your finances, over your prosperity, which is way more than your finances. What is it that you're putting your power into? See, Glenn Moschauer attended a religious science church in Los Angeles. And every Sunday morning, the minister told me he would look down, he'd see, oh my God, that's Agent so-and-so. Because he knew that he had to walk the talk, not just say it. So I'm going to close with a story about a bus driver. This was no ordinary bus driver. He lived in Chicago. And the bus that he drove, he decided he was going to do something really spectacular. Talk about stepping out in faith. He decided he was going to sing to his passengers. He sang everything from operatic songs to show tunes to popular songs. And he was good. He was really good. And so he became well known in the Chicago community because passengers actually waited to get on his bus. They would as the bus stop, the other buses would go by and they would wait and go, no, I want the guy with the singing bus driver. I want him. And he got so popular that they interviewed him on Chicago television. And they asked him, why are you doing this? And this is what he said. He said, I'm not a bus driver. I'm a professional singer. I only drive the bus to get a captive audience every day. Now, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. See, he was doing something he loved in a manner that supported him and those around him. And so I'm going to close with a challenge to you. Those of you that may think you're in another real kind of job, maybe you're not a bus driver, maybe you're whatever. Your real job, though, is to be an emissary of light and love. You're here to be the light bearer that he was and is. And so you have the opportunity to speak your word with power to everyone in your vicinity. Everyone you work with, everyone in your family, all your acquaintances. That's what your real job is, isn't it? We're all ministers. I might have reverend in front of my name. That doesn't mean anything, though. You are all ministering in some way. You get to be the most important person in someone's world every single day. You just may never know who that is. But whether you're standing in line at the grocery store or you're sitting at a conference table at work, you have the power to speak love and kindness, compassion in everything that you do. So I invite you to this week, be really, really careful about how you are choosing to use the law of command, because you're using it whether you know it or not, right? Right? Yes. You have the power to speak your word and make your demand of your choice upon this universe. Let's take that into prayer. And so we are moving into a consciousness that says yes, as Cerise so beautifully said in her song. That consciousness that is always placing its demand upon the universe. And so we vibrate and resonate to those demands and then put them into further power by speaking them aloud to ourselves and to the world. And so I know and claim for each and every person here through the very use of my words today that there is something being birthed, something beautiful in each and every person in here. And if they are going through something that is not positive, maybe even painful, I speak my word now for them and say, I demand to know and see the highest good in this. If there's anyone in here who is experiencing financial difficulty, I speak my word for them and say, I know now that I have the cattle on 1,000 hills and that each and every person here has that divine prosperity deep within them. All they need to do is call it forth. If someone in here is having a physical challenge, I speak my word for them and say that I am the very vibration of God, the very vibrancy of God, that every cell of my body and their body is now responding to this demand, and pure health is all that God is, and that is all that is in my body. If anyone is experiencing difficulties with friendships or significant others or spouses, I place my demand upon the universe by saying, I know that I too am love personified, and that because I love, I am love, and I am loving, I cannot help but attract all those words and actions right back to me in form through people, places, and things. I am love personified. And so I know that each one of us is taking the word today with us, that we are holding ourselves to a higher standard that says, I am here to be that light. I am here to be a light bearer, and that nothing and no thing can come between me and my good. And so I declare it now. It is done. I speak my word for those in the path of Hurricane Irma that all the weather calculations are nothing. And the only place that I know anything moves is the mind of God, and so I turn that completely over to Spirit, knowing that everyone is safe, cared for, supported during this time. And so I bless our time together this morning. I know that each and every person here has been lifted up in a way that they can see themselves and know the power at their disposal each and every day. Oh, what a wonderful world we live in. We call it forth now. We let it be so, and together we say, and so it is.